Welcome to the K-State Pregame Show, brought to you by GoPowerCat.com and sponsored by Coldest.com and The Wooden Cork. Now let's head to the Cats and Dogs studio and your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to the K-State Pregame Show, brought to you by GoPowerCat.com. And today we're going to talk about the game we thought would be the biggest game of the season. And if not this one, Utah in a few weeks out in Salt Lake City. But those two games jumped off this schedule the moment the schedule was released, as the significant challenges that K-State could face in the 25 season. Now that we're two-thirds done with the season, we know the truth. The challenges came earlier. The challenges came inexplicably in the non-conference. The challenges were different, unique to K-State, and you know what? Very foreign to the fan base, and reactions were pretty hostile. But Chris Klieman and his coaches kept coaching, and they went into their first off week with a 1-3 football team and came out of that into their next third of football and went 3-1, finishing up with a really impressive win at Kansas last Saturday, 42-17. That brings the Wildcats to 4-4, and while that is still well below K-State standards, it's not exactly where many fans thought the team would be at this point after looking so horrendous to start the year. K-State now looks like the football team that was promised, the one that we all thought we would see. Maybe they're still not quite as good as what the expectations were, but the team that played at Kansas was a really efficient, well-formed football team. They knew what they wanted to do and did it very well, particularly in the second half. Well, the effort you put in against Kansas isn't going to do it in this game. Texas Tech, I believe, despite a loss at Arizona State with a backup quarterback, is the best team in the Big 12, and it's not close. When they have quarterback Baron Morton, which they will in this game, Tech is a mighty force on both sides of the ball. And the story is well known, and it's shaken up college football because how dare Texas Tech use the rules to their advantage? Yeah, Tech got a big influence of money from mega donor Cody Campbell. And what did they do with it? They went out and bought offensive and defensive linemen primarily, and they're really good on both sides of the ball at the point of attack. That means they're a good football team. They can run it, they can throw it, and on the other side of the ball, they flat out get after quarterbacks and take away your run game. It's a big game. It's a tough challenge. And can Kansas State rise to it? Just a few weeks ago, maybe prior to the TCU game or even after that TCU game, in which K-State looked so much better? No, there's no way K-State can play with Tech. But now, hold on. All of a sudden, Kansas State looks like a much better cut out, defined football team. Avery Johnson played a really good game, and we'll talk to Chris Klieman about that later in the show. And if he can continue that upwards trajectory, as is the case of the whole team, K-State has a shot, but this team is really good. Texas Tech is ranked 13th, which is a ridiculous drop in the rankings from one road loss with a backup quarterback to the defending Big 12 champions, nonetheless. So, look, the national media won't give the Big 12 its respect, and that is rubbing off on Texas Tech, who deserves to be much higher in the rankings. I think they are a legitimate threat to win the national title, but they may not be if Kansas State wins this game, because a second loss to Tech might bump them right on out of the Big 12 championship game. They might get in on tiebreakers, but it certainly elevates Kansas State's chances. A lot has to go right, and during this pregame show, we'll talk to Brian Hanley about what Kansas State needs to do. We'll talk to Cole Carmody about what Texas Tech does that's going to give K-State so many issues. And then we'll go through the Big 12 schedule. We'll talk to Chris Klieman about his team coming out of Kansas and having to turn their attention to Texas Tech, because that won't be easy. And then I'll wrap it up with my one thing to watch, and this isn't very complex. It's going to be an easy thing to keep track of. So let's get rolling now. The game is at 2:30 p.m. at Bill Snyder Family Stadium on Fox. It's a huge stage, and let's get into breaking down that huge game with our football analysts and offensive lineman on the 97 and 98 Michael Bishop-led Kansas State teams. He is Brian Hanley. He joins us now from his studio in Frisco, Texas. And now it's time for Brian Hanley to step in and discuss Kansas State playing host to Texas Tech. And Big B, everyone around K-State football, whether they're in the locker room or fans or even the media that covers it, feels like K-State is getting back to where we expected them to be. And they haven't been close this year. The win over Kansas was much closer to that. But I'm going to just say this out loud, see if you agree. That ain't nearly good enough to beat Texas Tech.
No.
You better escalate your improvement even more, because this team is almost unbeatable with their starting quarterback, who they'll have.
Yeah. Yeah, what they did against KU, which was fine to beat KU, to blow out KU, let's be quite frank, and to physically dominate them. You'll get beat by 3 touchdowns if you play that way against Texas Tech. Yeah. Let's just be honest, people. If Kansas State plays the same way that they played against KU, Tech will beat them by 3 touchdowns. Now, can they play better? I think they can, and that's going to be the key. K-State's just got to play better. I don't think this is going to be a game where K-State can just line up and physically run the football at them. I think they're going to have to open up the run game by throwing it early and often. But then comes the big problem. Can you protect? Tech's D-line, best in the country. And they're 8 D linemen, the first stringers and the second stringers. That is the best in the country. It's the best D-line K-State's going to face. I don't care if K-State went to the national championship game. You won't face a better defensive line than what we're going to face on Saturday. And I've seen them all, ladies and gentlemen. Tech is that good. This is not hyperbole. This is not, oh, you're just saying that because of who. No. They are the best D-line in the country. And you're going to see it on Saturday. You don't have to take my word for it. You're going to see it. That also doesn't mean that Kansas State can't move the football. It just means that they're going to have to come up with creative ways to do it. That's all. Doesn't mean that that's impossible. We've seen teams move the football against this defense. We've seen teams be able to take advantage of certain things that they allow. Well, hell, we saw with Kansas did it to them. We saw Kansas be able to take some things, advantage of some things in the first half. And then in the second half, it went south. And then we saw what happened in that football game. So they're going to have an opportunity on the offensive side and the defensive side. You got to stand up to them because they're going to try to hit you in the mouth and keep hitting you in the mouth. And just as Fitz mentioned, now their starting quarterback is back.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's all about physicality and winning the line of scrimmage in football. Mm-hmm. And that's what Utah built itself for. Not Utah. Texas Tech built itself for.
Correct.
It's exactly how they designed this team. Utah did too, by the way. But Tech has done this to the nth degree. This is a team built to play on a national stage, not just a Big 12. Yes, they have a loss, but we understand the circumstances around that loss too. I just go back to this. A week ago, we sat in these very same positions and said K-State will be able to run the ball against Kansas and control the game, and they have to do that to control the game. They weren't able to run the ball against Kansas. Mm-mm. They ended up with 140 yards, and 45 of that went to the backup quarterback who came in on the last drive. They weren't able, and they still won. Is Kansas State going to have to run the ball effectively to stay in the game with Texas Tech, or can they just throw everything at them and hope that trickeration gets it done?
I think they're going to be able to, they're going to have to, kind of what I mentioned, you're going to have to throw it to be able to open up the run. And that means you're going to have to protect. And that also means maybe you have to max protect. Maybe you have to keep a tight end, in to help with the D-line. You're going to have to do these sorts of things. But I think they're going to have to throw it early to be able to open up the run. It doesn't mean you can't run the football. You're just going to have to be strategic in how you do it. And I don't think trickeration necessarily has to be part of it, Fitz. I just think you have to come up with creative ways.
Yeah.
Do some things in the run game that you haven't, or they haven't seen us do. Block things a certain way that they haven't seen, before, or take advantage of some stuff that you've seen on film that they don't do well in the run game, and do that. Duplicate that. That's what you're going to have to do. They also happen to have, as I mentioned, they've got the best D-line in football. And in my opinion, they also happen to have the best linebacker in football that runs around and makes a bunch of plays. I mean, Tech is good. They're good. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I know people will be mad and say, well, it's the best team money can buy, but teams have been buying teams, or colleges have been buying teams forever. It didn't just start just now. It's legal, and Tech got in on it. Good for them. Good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. I think it's great, to be honest with you. But K-State has an opportunity. As good as Tech is, and they are very good, Kansas State has a chance.
I agree. Kansas State doesn't like to run the quarterback draw with Avery Johnson. He's not a big-bodied guy. I kind of get it. But I feel like that's necessary in this game to maybe slow down that rush a little bit. But then again, you got to prove it's effective. If it's not effective, it's not going to make them change it anyway. But I feel like Avery has to get involved in the running game early and often in this one.
Yeah, I think quarterback powers, which I've been totally against,
right.
Because Avery doesn't want to do that. That's not what he wants to do. He's going to have to do that. You got to get the extra blocker in there to do that, even if it's 3 yards here or there. Okay, fine. Keep ourselves ahead of the sticks. Gonna have to do those sorts of things. But what we can't do is try to run wide on this team. We're not going. We might get a play or two trying to run wide. That's not where you're going to have a whole lot of success against Tech, trying to outrun them to the edge. You're not going to be able to do that. You got to get stuff going downhill. Not to mention, that's what K-State does best, is run the ball downhill. We're not trying to run wide on people. That's not what we do best. When we are at our best, we're going downhill, getting as many blockers at the point of attack as possible, a lot of gap system blocking and blocking that way, because you're not going to be able to out-athletic Tech. First of all, offensive linemen usually can't do that anyway, but our guys struggle in space. So don't put them in space. Just let them block going straight ahead.
Agree. And anything you can do to slow down Jacob Rodriguez, their linebacker, to make him second guess what's going on is huge, because that guy, typically if a team's bringing heat, you want to throw screen passes. You don't want to do that against Tech.
No.
They pursue to the ball so fast, and Rodriguez cleans everything up and with authority. So I think you just got to get to him quickly. You got to get past that front line. I don't even know if it's possible. I just don't. K-State will be without Dylan Edwards again. We suspect this will be the story the rest of the way. I think Joe Jackson might actually be okay in this one. I just do. I don't know why. He's a little bit more powerful, but you're going to want him in blocking every play too.
Correct.
That's what Joe is actually, his strength is in the passing game, because he can pass protect to a degree better than anyone else. Let's put it that way. And also he's a good weapon. So I think he's going to see almost the entire game on the field.
Yeah, I think so too. That's where you need him. Because I think what K-State's going to need to do, I don't think going to a bunch of 13 personnel when we have 3 tight ends in the game is going to beat Tech, because they're fast. So I don't think us being able to do that. Now, if you want to run the ball out of that formation, fine. But we see K-State so many times go to 12 and 13 personnel trying to throw the football. I don't think that's the avenue this week. What I think of the avenue is the K-State's got to go to the quick game. Get the ball out of Avery's hands quick. And what's going to require there? Wide receivers are going to have to win early. Tech will man you up. Fine. But play press man, whatever you want to do. Wide receivers got to win. This is one of those weeks to where we look at the wide receiver room and say, okay, guys, we're going to the quick game. We need you to win, and win early and often. What are you going to do? There's several weeks to where we talk about, when we're talking about the offense fits, we say it's on the O-line. And this will be the same thing. Don't get me wrong. It's always the O-line every week, but we put the game on them. Or this is, hey, okay, wide receivers, here's what we got to do to win. We got to run the quick game. We got to have you win early. Everything can't just be deep down the field. We're taking these deep drops. Their D-line is too good for that. Okay, you're not going to be able to do that consistently all game. I don't care if we had the best offensive line in the country. You can't consistently just drop 5 and 7 steps against this team and think you're always going to win. It's not going to work like that. Got to get it out of his hands quick. Wide receivers got to stand up this week and say, okay, it's on us, guys. Let it be on us. We'll do the job.
In the Big 12, you got to have the dude at quarterback. You just do. Mm-hmm. And Tech does. And Baron Morton, he's thrown for 1,500 yards, missed a number of games now, 13 TDs, 3 interceptions. Makes great decisions, completes 2/3 of his passes or more. He gets the ball out of his hands fairly quickly, and he's got a great offensive line. I don't know how K-State's going to slow this down unless they can get unexpected pressure on him, which they did to a degree against KU. Comparing the lines, there is no comparison.
No.
But K-State was able to find ways to create some pressure. Are they going to be able to do that in this game?
I mean, if I'm being honest, no.
Yeah.
The only way that they're going to be able to create pressure is by bringing pressure. And that leaves you vulnerable on the back end. If you do that against Tech and who they have at the receiver, you're asking for trouble.
Yep.
You're just asking for trouble. I'm just telling you that. And I'm just being honest. You know how I am, guys. I'm always going to be honest on what I see and what it is. The bottom line is, if K-State can somehow generate that, then yes, we have an opportunity. The teams that have slowed Tech down a little, and they haven't really been slowed down other than the game that Morton didn't play at Arizona State, they were able to handle them up front. They were able to get pressure on their quarterback with 4. When has K-State been able to do that this year? Consistently get pressure with just 4 guys.
No.
That's the key. Oh, and by the way, when you do start to bring pressure, then they, okay, well, we're going to run the ball at you. Hey, you want to keep that safety back? We'll just run it. And I think that is more the key than anything is, can Kansas State run? Tackle. How many missed tackles do we have last week? And I get it. Austin Romaine, I feel terrible for him. Look, the guy's got a broken either hand or wrist. I think it's the wrist. What are you going to do? And I said it before. Nobody wears a cast unless it's not no sprain or anything like that. Nobody's wearing a cast unless something is broken. Okay. And the guy just can't wrap up. I feel horrible for him. Horrible. But at some point, if they can't tackle, how are they helping you? And that we saw that last week, Fitz. Again, it's against KU. It's like, I don't want them replaced per se, but what are you supposed to do? I mean, I don't know. It's terrible. I feel so bad because he is good and he's always in position. But if you're trying to tackle a guy in the Big 12 with one hand, one wrist, that's just not, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I've got flashes of Cameron Dickey, their running back, just taking advantage of that. This kid is really good. And he's exactly why Tech's offense is dangerous, because you can't just say Baron Morton and receivers have to be stopped. They'll turn it around and hand it to Dickey and the other running back, Williams, and move the ball that way. Not to get by, but in a national sense. Like if you look at the stats, they're one of the better running games in the country. This is like a Rubik's Cube with there's absolutely no solution other than the quarterback got hurt and we could get to the backup. And that I don't see that happening here. Well, I don't like this matchup at all. I sound like Debbie Downer, but as much as K-State's improved, I know this. You can't make mistakes in this game. And that takes us to special teams. They started the last game with a glaring error. There's no coming back from that in this one.
Nope.
You've got to be so good in all areas. You can't turn the ball over. You got to convert a 4th down here and there because you're going to be in a lot of them. You're going to be in a lot of them, and you're probably going to be in a position where you're behind and you need to convert to stop being behind, to get really technical. So I just think it's going to come down to K-State has to make plays on both sides of the ball. That's where I can't judge where this team's at, because this team hasn't done that. But the team the last 2 games, I should say, has done that. They forced turnovers. They made big plays. Avery's been really good throwing down the field. So there's some things here to hang your hat on, aren't there?
There is. And let me just kind of put it in layman's terms. You know, K-State is playing the best football that they've played all year. If you looked at this at the beginning of the year, most people thought that this game was going to be the best game in the Big 12 conference for the season. That's what people thought. So when you look at it from that standpoint, okay, K-State is playing their best football. Texas Tech is really good. The difference is that Tech is better than what people thought they were going to be. Some people thought that, well, they got all these new collection of players. How are they going to mesh together? Turns out whoever put the roster together did their homework and said, yeah, we can go get a collection of really talented players. And yeah, they're getting a lot of money, but they also get along. And they also just want to go play and go win. So whoever put the roster together did their homework and did it right. That's the difference. And while K-State is playing their best football, I don't think it's as good as what a lot of people thought that they were going to be. I think that's where the difference is, Fitz, is that Tech is better than what we thought. K-State's not as good as what we thought. And this is where we are when we meet up.
Yep.
But there's still a path to victory. Now, the margin for victory is razor sharp.
Yeah.
Man, it is razor sharp. And special teams has to be a part of it. Special teams and turnovers has to be a part of it. Hidden yardage, all of that stuff. It has to be a part of it. And that's okay. That is okay for it to be a part of it. But to kid ourselves and think that we can fumble the opening kickoff and come back and win, that's not happening. I can tell you that right now. It's not happening. We've got to start being special. And the problem is, apparently it just doesn't exist on K-State's roster, which is unfortunate that we can't find specialists or return specialists or just people on special teams in general that are going to give you that, what you need to be able to take advantage of it. Because the one thing I know, the backups on Tech and frontline players on Tech that play on offense and defense, they play special teams. So these guys that we talk about that they paid a bunch of money for on their roster, yeah, they're on special teams because they want to win. So I'm not saying K-State doesn't want to win, Fitz. I'm just saying at some point we got to find a way to get more guys, frontline guys on these specialty units to make a difference. And that's where it is, to make a difference.
I agree with all that. And we'll see what Cole Carmody says after this break. He's broken down the Texas Tech Red Raiders. But as we go into this break, K-State fans, I just want to say that while it might be a long weekend, because I don't think either one of us, and maybe Cole, I don't want to speak for him, have a good feeling about this. This show is partially sponsored by the Wooden Cork. So you can go get alcohol to treat what you're about to see on Saturday. So go visit the Wooden Cork at the break. You can pause the show and then come back to us and we'll talk about Texas Tech and how K-State might do it from Cole Carmody's perspective. We'll be right back on the K-State pregame show. I'm Fitz. That was Big B, and Cole is coming up.
Looking for the rarest bottles at the best price? Experience the best alcohol delivery service. At Wooden Cork, we have your favorite bottles in stock and ready to be delivered to your door.
Visit woodencork.com and use the code LIFEOFFITZ for your special discount.
Welcome back to the K-State pregame show, and now it's time to take a look at the Texas Tech Red Raiders, Kansas State's opponent on Saturday at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. And we usually set aside about 15 minutes for Cole Carmody. Cole, welcome to the show. I reserved 3 hours for you to explain how good K-State's opponent is and how K-State can win. I'm just going to mute myself, and you take over for 3 hours. How's that sound?
3 hours is a really long time, but we talk about 3 hours in the course of a football game, Fitz, that could happen. And I think that there's a good chance on Saturday that this is going to be a really good football game. And, we're going to talk about the matchups. We're going to look at how Texas Tech can exploit K-State and how K-State, I think, can exploit Texas Tech. But the bottom line is I'm really looking forward to Saturday because this is going to be one heck of an environment at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. And at the beginning part of the season, if you would told me that K-State's 4-4 and Texas Tech is gunning for a college football playoff spot, I don't know if I would have believed you, but the fact that there is still this much hype for this game, it just tells you that folks around Manhattan really, really love and care for those K-State Wildcats.
Yeah, I mean, month ago, I'm like, this is going to be ugly. And now after the last two performances as TCU and particularly KU last Saturday, I do see signs of hope. How does that translate to playing Texas Tech?
I think there's a few ways K-State can exploit Texas Tech. And, I would point folks to Texas Tech's schedule. And, you're always a victim of your own schedule, right? Like whenever a team is really good and they haven't played anybody, you're like, oh, look who they've played. But in the non-conference fits, they played Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, and Oregon State. And you look at K-State's non-conference and it's not exactly that much better. But the difference between K-State and Texas Tech is that Texas Tech dominated in those games and showed zero signs of weakness. And so, I think the win at Utah really stands out. But let's not kid ourselves, Fitz. The guy who won that game at Utah is not going to be playing quarterback on Saturday. Will Hammond burst onto the scene. It was a really tight game when Baron Morton got hurt, and he really came back and led them to victory in that game. And Will Hammond's ACL is gone, and so now it's Baron Morton. We expected him to play even if Hammond hadn't been hurt. But now you don't have that to fall back on. And I think that's something that is going to be a storyline to watch is Baron Morton hasn't played. And they're kind of entrusting the senior, throwing him into the Wolves here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Fitz. I don't believe Morton's ever played at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. So this will be an interesting matchup from the quarterback standpoint. And if there's one thing, if you're a K-State fan to look at, I have some, not doubt, but I'm just interested to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, me too. We discussed before we started this, they played Oklahoma State last week. They didn't need Baron Morton, but they didn't play him. Instead of letting him have a few reps, get back in the groove, and then Hammond gets hurt. They go to the third string, and they've got problems now. If Baron Morton gets hurt, they've got problems. But they're still capable of winning because of their line play. This is as dominant as an offensive line and defensive line paired together as I've seen in a while. It's probably a Texas team, to be honest, who had this kind of matchup of just pure dominance at the point of attack. And that is problem number one for Kansas State. The offensive line has been better, but this is a huge challenge. The defensive line was really good in the second half of KU. This is a much better line. This is going to be where this game's decided. K-State's not going to win the point of attack. They just can't get routed at the point of attack. They still need to be able to function.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think that Texas Tech right now, their defensive line is ahead of their offensive line. And I would look at K-State being at home as an advantage to the defense in this scenario. I think that as good as Texas Tech's offensive line has been, K-State kind of getting that extra 12th man neutralizes it or brings it down just a touch. And, K-State's defensive line performed very, very well at KU. I think they're starting to figure out some different schemes, right? We always talk about Matt Wells having to scheme guys open. Well, Joe Klieman kind of has to scheme guys into sacks. He has to scheme into turnovers, and he's been doing that the last few weeks. This defense has really kind of settled in to that four-man front, and even without Toby Osunsanmi, we saw some really good things from Jordan Allen. We saw some really good things from Ryan Davis, and I thought Malcolm Alcorn-Crowder, he might be the key to this game on the defensive side. Fitz played his best game he has in his entire career at K-State. So, yeah, I think that Texas Tech's offensive line is solid. We'll get into some of the numbers here in a second. But I think K-State's defensive line can kind of neutralize that because they have that 12th man behind him.
Yeah, I agree. K-State's crowd needs to be loud and proud, and that was the point of this morning's daily delivery, too. No stinking out at halftime, folks. You got to stick around for this one. Tech leads the conference in points per game at 43.6, and they give up 12.4. Cole, they're outscoring their opponents by 31 points, and they lost a game.
Yeah.
They are absolutely dominant in so many ways. They're averaging right around 500 yards on offense and giving up just a little bit more than half of that. Opponents are struggling to break 300 yards per game against them. First of all, you traditionally want to run the ball. Is K-State going to be able to run the ball?
Right now, as it sits here today, that's a tall task.
Yeah.
I would say that right now, K-State probably needs to lean into more of its passing attack. And, there's a few things that make this matchup interesting for K-State on the offensive side. The last time that these two teams played, Avery Johnson was a freshman, and he ran for 5 touchdowns. Let's not forget that. And I know Joey McGuire hasn't forgotten that. And so even though Avery Johnson hasn't been using his legs that much this year, completely new coordinators, completely new staff, like that's very real. But Joey McGuire still remembers that. And I guarantee you this Texas Tech defense is prepping for Avery Johnson to use his legs. And Fitz, when a team preps on one specific thing, that means they're not prepping on something else. How many times have you talked about it? Bill Snyder used to run 2-point plays when they were up by 4 touchdowns just so the opponent was using that time in practice to cover it just in case. I think that Texas Tech is going to be prepared to stop the quarterback run game. Now, with that being said, you still have to try because without Dylan Edwards, that explosive run is just not there. But with that being said, there are other ways that you can get Avery Johnson out in space. And I really think that if you can find a way to do that, maybe not run up the middle with him, but if you can find a way to get him on, those fake read jet sweeps that they love to run, K-State could have some success running the football. It's not going to be easy, but I do think that a majority of K-State's success is going to come through the air because, let's be honest, Fitz, K-State's offensive line has been really, really good pass protecting.
They have. They're going to have to find a way to keep Avery clean. Tech likes to pretty much come after the quarterback with they don't need to pull a lot of tricks. These guys sometimes are unblockable. But come after the quarterback, let their linebacker sit in there to protect things and cover in man. And if you cover in man, we know Avery can take advantage of that. They might have to consider some zone coverage because of Avery. And if they do that, he's shown he can take you apart throwing the ball. The bottom line, Avery's got to play elite football, doesn't he?
He does. And I think what K-State showed against KU is that it's very difficult to play man coverage and not blitz against K-State. Right? Like, that's what KU tried to do. For whatever reason, they said our D-backs are better than your wide receivers. And Jace Brown took that personally. Jerron Tibbs took that personally. And let's just call it how it is. They scorched that Kansas secondary. They only had to throw the ball 17 times and have 11 completions for over 200 yards through the air. That's really bad defense, but that's also really good offense. What does Texas Tech like to do on defense, Fitz? Well, they love to blitz. We're going to talk about these guys. Jacob Rodriguez, one of the best, if not the best linebacker in the Big 12. David Bailey, 10.5 sacks. He's going to be a pro. Incredible on the edge. He leads the conference in pressures, 28%. He does a really good job there. Romello Height is on the opposite side. Those are the headliners for this Texas Tech defense. But they like to blitz. And I look at this, Fitz. Avery Johnson has been sacked 6 times this year. The entire season, he's only been sacked 6 times. The pressure rate has been very low all season long. It's a tall task for K-State to hold up against this pass rush, but it's undeniable that due to Avery's speed, due to his ability to just kind of have any kind of pocket presence, he hasn't been sacked. And I think it's going to be key for Avery to know, hey, don't try and force this. It's okay to take a sack every once in a while because you want to make sure that you possess the ball against a team like this. But Fitz, I mean, history tells us that this Kansas State offensive line is held up. I really think that they're going to have at least a punter's chance, maybe better than some other offensive lines that Texas Tech has faced this year because, I mean, they've been really good. They have.
Flip it over to the K-State defense. Starts with Baron Morton. The dude can throw it all over the park. I mean, 1,500 yards so far. He's been out for a few games, 13 TDs, 3 interceptions, completes about 69% of his passes. He's got good receivers. He's got a tight end that works for him. He's got running back Cameron Dickey, who I watched just go up and down the field. When they really get into trouble, he's been able to run the ball. But you've uncovered an interesting stat about Texas Tech's running game and how they've built up these impressive stats so far this year.
Yeah, they're fourth in the conference rushing yards per game at just under 200 at 199. But I went and kind of looked a little bit deeper into this because sometimes you look at a statistic like that and you're like, well, you know how well they ran against Kansas, right? They ran for over 300 yards. And I think previewing Kansas, we all talked about KU's run defense. And I do think K-State probably would have had a chance to exploit that if the passing game wasn't working as well as it was on Saturday. But this Texas Tech offense, this Texas Tech run game, there's been 3 games that I look at and really kind of stuck out to me. And one of them was Oregon State. And keep in mind, they won this game 41-14. Oregon State's been horrible. They fired their coach, but they ran for 92 yards against the Beavers. Against Arizona State without Baron Morton and with Will Hammond, who is a notorious rusher, and Cameron Dickey, who we all know, he didn't do much. Neither did Hammond. Ran for 78 yards against Arizona State. And then against Houston, who I think everyone has been surprised by this season. I think no one really saw where they would be at this point, but they ran for 169 yards. And they won all of those games minus the Arizona State game. And those are just 3 games. I would tend to say those are outliers. But anytime you rush for 200 yards a game, and specifically Arizona State and Oregon State, if you can hold them under that 200 yards and make them become one-dimensional, you have a very good chance to slow down this offense.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when they get two-dimensional, you're losing, just losing. And Baron Morton being injured at some point made them less dimensional. We saw Hammond come in and throw the ball all over the place at Utah. He's not a thrower, though, and he's proven that. He's a runner first, and people have been able to take away the throw. But they're capable of doing both, aren't they? And it starts with an offensive line that is big and bought, which is perfectly legal. And it was a major upgrade for Texas Tech. They were able to operate at a much higher level just because they're blocking at a much higher level.
They are. And I think, the quarterback run game you brought up with Hammond and even with Morton, it fascinates me because Morton is a very, I don't want to say dangerous runner, but he puts himself in danger. Like, this is a guy who is not afraid to take a hit. And if you go look and see what, Texas Tech fans and people who cover the team are saying is like, they are worried that Baron Morton is going to go back out there and get hurt again because that's just what he's done in his career. He just lays it on the line every single time. And, on one hand, you love to see that from your quarterback. But on the other hand, when you haven't been able to finish 3 games now at this point, he's had been taken out of 3 games. Like, you kind of want to hit the brakes. And I mean, without Will Hammond, like I struggle to see where the quarterback run game is going to come from. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Baron Morton's going to go out there and he's going to run, put up 75 yards rushing against K-State, and Texas Tech's going to steamroll K-State. That's very possible. But without that, I cannot see a world in which Baron Morton goes out there and there are design runs where Texas Tech is putting him on the line. I think they're going to be more pro style. They're going to be more reliant on Cameron Dickey. They're going to be more reliant on these wide receivers. Caleb Douglas has been tremendous for them. This is a game where the defense for K-State has to win this game, right? Like, if you win this game, the recipe for K-State to win this game is their defense has to win this game. And it's crazy to say because Texas Tech's defense is legit. But if K-State's defense comes to play and they're getting good field position, this is going to be one of those games that feels like it's an NFL game. It's going to be a field position game. There will be punts. If this is a close game, there will be punts. If K-State can take advantage of that and maybe even find a way to turn them over a time or two, we know K-State likes to do that. They lead the country in turnovers. I do like K-State's chances.
Well, it'll be interesting. I know this. K-State can't be having any empty possessions because of turnovers on special teams. There's little room for error in this game. And if they make errors, be it turnovers or penalties or just poor time management, which they ran into at Baylor, they're going to lose. Tech's that good. I think Tech, despite that loss, is still by far the best team in this conference.
Agreed. K-State can't beat itself, right? We talked about last week. I believed KU would beat themselves. K-State tried to beat themselves in the beginning, but to their credit, they responded. And KU ultimately did beat themselves. They couldn't get over that hump, that mental hump of facing Kansas State. Well, K-State can't beat themselves this week. And I think to a degree, Fitz, we've looked at Chris Klieman. If you look at what Chris Klieman has done in these games, I went back and I looked at his record against top 25 teams. If you count the COVID season, I believe I had that record at 5-6. If you discount the COVID season, it's a little bit closer. I believe maybe they might be over 500. I'd have to go back and double check. That should have been something I wrote down. But either way, he has been very good against the top 25, relatively speaking. And so at home, I asked this question in our group text. I can't remember the last time K-State was a home underdog, let alone a touchdown home underdog. K-State's been really good in these games typically. And just when you doubt them, they seemingly find a way to come back and respond. I don't know if they're going to win this game, but I have a feeling they're going to put up a fight because that's just what Chris Klieman teams tend to do in games like this.
100%. I agree with you on all of that. We'll see if the Cats can beat the Red Raiders, 2:30 p.m. on Saturday at the Bill. Game is on Fox nationally. Big stage, big game. Let's see if the Cats can come up big. As Cole Carmody from our Go Power Cat staff with the breakdown of the Texas Tech Red Raiders, the 13th ranked team in the nation. And after this break, we will get to our Big 12 schedule. Great schedule in the conference again this week. We'll talk to Chris Klieman a little bit, and then I'll wrap it up with my one thing to watch. This is the K-State pregame show, and we'll be right back.
From the house to the car to your tailgate, Coldest.com offers elite insulated tumblers. Imagine yourself standing in the football stadium's parking lot, and you want to keep your drink cold or hot. Coldest gets the job done. They're leak-proof, come in numerous designs and sizes, holding up to 46 ounces. And here's the best part. With your Coldest mug, no one needs to know what you're really drinking. Coldest.com. Use the code LIFEOFFITS for a 10% discount.
Now let's take a look at the schedule in the Big 12 for Week 10 of the 2025 season. There are 7 conference games this weekend, starting early and ending late. Strap in, Big 12 fans. There are some great games this weekend, beginning with a trio of games in the early broadcast window. The 2 11 a.m. games feature teams near the bottom of the league standings on the road, starting with West Virginia visiting Houston, where the Cougars are 2 touchdown favorites. That game is on FS1. Also at 11, UCF heads to Baylor, and this game may be interesting. The Knights seem to be improving while the hometown Baylor Bears are sputtering, but 3.5 points in Waco favor the Bears. The game is on ESPNU. This week's TNT game kicks off at noon at Iowa State, with the Arizona State Sun Devils and the Iowa State Cyclones meeting in a game that both teams need to win to stay with the upper half of the conference standings. This one could be a dandy, with ISU favored by a touchdown. Moving to the afternoon window, Texas Tech travels to Kansas State to take on the suddenly solid Wildcats in a 2:30 p.m. game on Fox. Tech is 4-1 in the Big 12, while K-State is 3-2, with the Red Raiders being 7.5-point favorites on the road. At 3 p.m., Oklahoma State travels to Kansas for a game shown on ESPN+. The evening broadcast window features a 6 p.m. game in Boulder with Arizona at Colorado. This is a game that will send the loser toward the bottom scrap heap of the standings, but the visiting Wildcats are 4.5-point favorites on FS1. And finally, the biggest game of the week is also the Big 12 After Dark contest as Cincinnati heads to Salt Lake City to play the physical Utes in our Big 12 Insiders Game of the Week. Can the Bearcats keep on winning, or will the Utes be too much for Cincinnati to handle? UFC is ranked 17th and sits at 5-0 in the Big 12, while number 24 Utah is 3-2, but the Utes are 10.5-point favorites on ESPN. That's it for your preview of this weekend's Big 12 football action. Now let's return to Fitz in the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the show. That was the Big 12 schedule this week. It's going to be a fun weekend of football, and one of the most fun games is right here in Manhattan. But first, we need to talk to K-State coach Chris Klieman about the magnitude of this challenge, even coming out of a really good performance against the University of Kansas. Winning your 17th straight game against your rival has to be headsy stuff, has to get to you, has to make you feel really good. You can't do that for long. Tech will make you feel really bad really fast if you're not prepared to play the Red Raiders. Let's get to the start of the Chris Klieman press conference from Monday afternoon at the Bill and some of my follow-up questions. This is a big challenge for K-State, and simply getting ready to challenge Texas Tech is the first step. Here's Coach Chris Klieman, and after this, my one thing to watch.
Good afternoon, everyone. It was obviously a great day on Saturday, really good win over a good team in a really good environment. I thought our guys had a great week of preparation, had really good focus, and played their best when we needed to have their best. And I told them early in the week that average wasn't going to be good enough and we needed to raise our level of play. And they did that. And so it was fun to see us put a game together like that and get a big win. Now it just raises the stakes and it gets tougher and tougher. We've got a really good football team coming in here in Texas Tech and excited to have them at home. But we've got to come up with great plans, got to have great focus because it's going to be a heck of a battle here at the Bill.
Taken for what you've said throughout the season, your preparation, the team's preparation has greatly improved. How do you keep maintaining that? And as you mentioned, the challenges get bigger.
Yeah, couple things. One, we changed some of our stuff about a month ago as well, and we now practice on Friday and not Thursday, and the guys have really bought into that, and we do a long walkthrough on Thursday, and our guys really have – you got to buy into it if you're going to make a change when you're not having success, and our kids did that. But I also know, as every team is going through, you can't practice as much right now. You know, everybody's banged up and beat up, and we're no different. And, you know, I hope the guys that got hurt on Saturday will be able to play. We'll find out. But you can't be out there and just banging on guys. And so we got to do a really good job, with our film preparation, with our walkthrough looks, and then taking care of our bodies. I mean, that's the things that we've got every modality here for our guys to take care of it. Now, as you get into November, man, you got to take care of your body.
What do you do to get the guys to mentally shift now? You got to get over what you just did. Here we go.
I know it. One of the things is we haven't done a great job of that after that game. And, you know, I know it, and I think you got to talk about it. No different than you talk about last week and the streak and whatever. And this week, you got to talk about, you know, that was a great win, but we have to move forward, and we got to play. We can play better. I know we can play better. We did some really good things, but we have to play better. I think having this as a home game is going to help. I think we're going to have a pretty electric crowd, and I think it's going to be, you know, a crazy environment. Now we've got to match that with really good preparation, really good physicality, and be focused because this team has run a lot of people out of there in the first half.
And was that – you look at Avery's stats, there's nothing overwhelming about him, but was that his best game? He just kind of managed the entire game.
Yeah, I thought it was, as well as same thing. We didn't have the ball that much, especially in the first half, but we were efficient with the second drive we have, or the first drive we have on offense, we take it down and score. We get the punt return or punt block for a touchdown, so we don't have another drive. And then we have another nice drive to score after a turnover by the defense. It was just efficient in 20 plays. And then in the second half, once we got the game in hand, we didn't throw it very much. We ran the ball an awful lot. The conditions were not very good, so we wanted to try to shorten that game and make them play catch up, and didn't need to do very many things. But at critical times, obviously, they kicked the field goal, and talked to Wellesley about being aggressive, and we see a great look and throw the vertical to Jace for a touchdown. That's pretty efficient. And, you know, the thing for us that we couldn't do on Saturday is lose the explosive play battle. And it's the first time that I think that we really did really well and dominated that. We didn't have a ton of explosive plays on offense. I think our tally was around 10, but they didn't on their offense. They only had a handful. So that's something that, you know, this week's going to be the same thing.
That was Kansas State coach Chris Klieman, and he knows how good Texas Tech is. Coaches always say their opponent is really good. He's not lying. This Texas Tech team is a mighty force. Can K-State handle it? If K-State can't handle it, they're in the Big 12 race, because I think they're better than Oklahoma State and Colorado, and that makes a huge gain out in Utah. But getting past Tech is just a huge bargain. Can you get over that hump? If you can, let's talk about it. But if you can't, okay, we're going to live with it. The season is what it is. And what do you need to watch to see if Kansas State's going to hang around and compete with Texas Tech? Well, here's my one thing to watch, and it's pretty simple. Is K-State's offense able to move the ball? Because it's entirely possible Tech's defense could dominate this game to the point where K-State just can't run it, and Avery Johnson doesn't have enough time to throw it. They can be that dominant. But if K-State can run it a little bit, if Avery Johnson finds room to run himself, because that has got to be part of the plan, and he can manufacture time if needed to get the ball downfield, if K-State's moving the ball, they've got a fighter's chance. They've got it. If you can slug away, you can get it done. But if they're not going to move the ball in that first quarter, if it's going to be a huge struggle, and we've seen K-State go up against a Texas team as an example a few years ago when they couldn't move the ball in the first half and came back in the second half and forced overtime and almost won. So it does take 4 quarters, but you got to be able to move it some, and you got to be able to keep Texas Tech close, even if you're not moving the ball in the early stages of the game. It's your one thing to watch, and we'll see if K-State can simply show some signs of life on offense. That's how tough this challenge is. It's K-State and Texas Tech, 2:30 p.m. at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. The game is on Fox. It's supposed to be a little chilly. I think it's supposed to be dry at this recording, but a high of 50. Could be a beautiful day for football in the Flint Hills, and I will be there. And I hope to see you at the Bill.
Thank you for watching the K-State pregame show. Make sure you're subscribing to this YouTube channel, and please share your thoughts in the comments. Also, please support our sponsors, Coldest.com and WoodenCork.com, and remember the code LifeOfFits for your discount. This has been a Go Power Cat and Spirit Street production.